Welcome back, everybody, to your daily update on the state of the Malazan Empire. And you might be asking yourself, why is your courteous host, a model of virtue and restraint, drinking a beer before noon? Well, the reason is that I'm gonna help someone move out of our flat today. So I'll be carrying boxes for the rest of the day, so I figured I'll do this video before. Also, drinking beer during moves is very much a German thing, so I figure I can start early today. Anyway, we're gonna finish up with book 3 of Midnight Tides today, and there's a lot of war, so we need some refreshments, I suspect. Let's get into it. Cheers. All right. So yeah, I finished Midnight Tides yesterday. Not Midnight Tides, but the book 3 yesterday, and so I figured we have a lot to talk about, like a lot more to talk about. um, to wit, the like the first big battle with all the magic, everyone being dead. Um, we need to talk about desertion once again. We need to talk about violence, sexual violence, and stuff like that. Um, and things being more and more problematic or not problematic within the capital in Letheras. But let's start with the battle because I feel that's like an easy bit. Yes, we have that first battle. The Edur win. They destroy a large, they destroy their first Letheri army. They capture the prince and the queen, and while it is a huge success in a way, because it's like a very like a big military success with not that many dead on the Edur side, just demons. We're going to come back to the whole demon thing again and again, I suspect. Anyway, it also shows how brutal the new ally of the Edur, how brutal the power of the twisted of the crippled god is when it comes to the magic. Like we have this huge unveiling of magic. It really destroys the Letheri magic, which is already brutal. But it also takes a huge toll on the sorcerers, on the Krishnan of the Edur, right? It's not just like wielding that power and then it like works. It's a bit like when when humanity started playing with nuclear force and nuclear power, that a lot of the people that worked on that kind of stuff also like suffered radiation poisoning before we really understood what it does. It's like there's kind of, I feel some kind of resonance there, at least for me. Yeah, they have certainly found a powerful ally, but it's sort of, it's not exactly just all benefits for the Edward there. It's a lot of other things there, and that's the thing that I feel we need to figure out there. Not figure out, but the thing that I feel is important to understand, and that's something that definitely Troll Sengar understands, maybe others also understand, is that that loss of innocence. Innocence is the wrong word, but that loss of moral high ground in a way, and also innocence, like purity, loss of purity is, I guess, what we need to talk about, because what makes the Edur culture, or what made the Edur culture so resilient for so long, is what Thrall puts it rather well when he talks with his brother, with Fear, about it. It's like they were like turned inside and turned backwards, and that makes their culture so resilient and strong and traditional. But they have to take on some of the Letheri traits and play with things that they don't really understand to actually achieve what they have set out to achieve. That's the thing that I spoke about yesterday or the day before, or like Friday, I guess would be anyway. That thing that they have to become more like the Letheri than to be able to beat them, and that then raises the question if that is actually worth doing, because You may win, but the thing you set out fighting for is just no longer there once you have won your war. So yeah, that's something that more people are realizing. We have the whole idea of demon summoning being very much a highly problematic thing, a highly morally problematic thing, is hammered home really brutally with our good friend Thrall Sengar finding his own demon guardian that he has healed, defying traditions and defying the arrogance that you have of the Tistedur for their slave demons. And he's defying that, and he's getting that demon healed, and we'll learn more about that demon. We see more of the his personality come through in a way. And yes, that's, I feel, is once again a very interesting comment on the practice of summoning demons within fantasy literature and fantasy role-playing role-playing as well. It's like you summon them, you use them, then they're dead, and you don't feel bad for it. Like whether it's demon. I mean, demon has the problem that the word is nowadays rather negative in a way. Like when you look back that from the Greek where it comes from, you have both evil and good demons. You have your oidaimonia, and you have your kakodaimons, like oidaimons and kakodaimons, like your good and bad ones. That kind of thing. Like, my Greek is atrocious and I have no idea what I'm talking about, but seriously, that's where it kind of comes from. Anyway, nowadays when we think demon, we don't think good demons. We always think like horned, like underlings to devils, basically, is what we think. And you have this really complex, like hierarchy within Dungeons and Dragons with demons and demon lords and devils and devil lords and all this stuff, because D&D is just very much about building your lore by building complex systems of hierarchies that at least one player on your table can learn by heart and then correct everyone else at the table every time they get something wrong. That's just why this is in there, because it's a specific kind of fun for a specific kind of person. Anyway, for a lot of like fantasy literature, fantasy gaming, in the fantasy sphere, summoning demons or summoning entities and using them has been very much normalized. And when we see demons as just like beings from a different plane of existence, a different world, whatever, where you can summon people from. You have, like, with Dungeons and Dragons, you have your elementals and shit like that, and they are not evil by definition. And even the problem there that I said before is that summoning a demon and feeling justified in using them in combat because they are evil, because they're demons, that's exactly the kind of othering that we as Westerners did while we were still holding slaves. And we're like, yeah, you take away their humanity, you strip that from them, and you denigrate them and make them something else, so you can feel morally justified to use those people. And what Erikson does here, with Lilac showing this personality, is similar to what he did with that first demon. What's that demon called? Pearl? I think it was called Pearl, just like the assassin, but that's a different thing. In Gardens of the Moon, that is like very afraid, and now we have Lilac, and he's telling this story that he is lives on this great river, and that he is a fisherman. And now there's an interesting thing with the fisherman thing, because he tells his story about these catfish. Are they catfish, like those whiskered fish that are really huge and eat everything, and that then crawl onto land and leave their skin? Yeah. We've heard about those before, right? Yes, we did. In the beginning of House of Chains with Thrall Sengar. We've met them once again later in House of Chains. I think, yeah, also in House of Chains when our good friend Torvald and Karsa meet those fishes. So we now see the beginning of what happens to the nascent. We actually get it more or less spelled out when the Warlock King talks to Rulad, and Rulad is like, why not flood those worlds so we can ride our ships to every like parallel warren that we want to find all the other Tistedur. We see all of that there. That's the homeland where where those people come from, which drives that whole colonialism kind of thing even deeper, right? That parallel even deeper in there, because now they're going, not only going and grabbing all the inhabitants from that world, drag them to their world and use them as tools and destroy them. No, they're now also going and demolishing and destroying their homeland and taking everything from their homeland and for their own use, so and exploiting all of that. So that parallel is even deeper in there. And if I knew more about post-colonial and colonialist studies, I might do a full video on that. Otherwise, unfortunately, I don't know that kind of thing. I can just point out the parallels, and if you know the vocabulary and have read the books, then go right ahead and do that, because it's in there, and it's brilliantly done, because it then goes and leads us to question, or gives us the opportunity to question our behavior as fantasy role players if we play role-playing games, or as authors and readers when we read about summoning demons and using them for stuff, because we kind of get shown that parallel there and how morally problematic that is. It's like, how can I be a good character if I summon demons and use them? It's like, yeah, maybe you can't. Maybe think about that for a moment. So yeah, that's definitely something that I said I'll come back to, and I'll probably come back to it again and again and again. And I feel it's really important to have that there. The other thing is the price of victory, obviously in trait. Yes, with Rulad being casually killed by Ironbars, another Crimson Guards dude that we have met. Now, the Crimson Guard is one of those groups that, again, just gonna drop it here. If you want to know more about the Crimson Guard, read in, say, Esselmont's Malazan novels, because not only in the one that is called Return of the Crimson Guard does the Crimson Guard take a lot of place. So if you're interested in them, go read those books. I mean, go read those books in any case, because they're great. Also, go watch Critical Dragon's interview with Esselmont that he put up yesterday. It's also great. Or I've heard it's great. I have not yet watched it, is what I'm trying to say. But go do that. Go watch his channel anyway, because it's great. Although I suspect you already do. So the Crimson Guard showing up for a moment there to hang out with Seren Pedak, and we're gonna go back to that in a moment, but just like the way Rulad is casually killed there and then returns again. We learn more about the gift of the sword. We learn more about him suffering and dying and coming back to life again. And what we learn there is, this time around, it's like every time he dies, he learns and he comes back stronger and more powerful. And that's like one of those classic horror tropes in a way. It's a bit of a Hydra situation. It's like you know the Hydra, when you chop off one head and two heads sprout. It does somehow do something similar. It's like you kill Rulad, he comes back, he's more powerful. You kill him again, he comes back, he's more powerful, and so on and so on and so on. Which leads us to the question of, what the fuck can we actually do to get him really killed? Well, we'll see different solutions to that problem in the future, I suspect. But here it's just, we see that Rulad is, while being powerful, he's mostly a tool and a conduit for the crippled god's power, because Ironbars, who is a badass, obviously, Crimson Guard seems to be really badass, can just like casually break his neck. I mean, not casually, but can just do that. And I love the point later on when Seren Pedak actually explains that he did that, and he's just like, the way that's all handled is just really cool. Anyway, what I wanted to talk about is the situation with Rulad in the camp of the Tist Edor, where you see the power games being played by Hanan Mossag. It's a bit of that like Grand Vizier kind of trope going on there. You see Rulad struggling between being Rulad, who is fundamentally a good boy, who is just not like old. Rulad was at the beginning. That's why what I like so much about Rulad as a character is he is your typical cocksure adolescent youngest brother who feels the need to always, outdo the grand reputation of his older brothers, who are all super, super powerful, like not powerful, but renowned. Like Troll is that incredible spear fighter. Fear is already that weapons master of the Tist Edur. Benedas is this really powerful sorcerer. I mean, we don't see much of Benedas, but it's actually dropped that he's next to Hanan Masak and maybe that Nerud chief. He's like one of the most powerful wizards, sorcerers of the Tist Edur. And Rulad grows up in their shadow and feels the need to assert himself while still being fundamentally a adolescent boy. And I don't know how many adolescent boys you've known in your life and how often you fondly think back on your own adolescence. I suspect it's not that often, because when you are a bit beyond that, you realize what a dumbass you've been most of the time as an adolescent boy, trying to prove yourself, and so forth. So yeah, he's basically that good kid, and that good kid gets slowly drowned out by all these other things, by the crippled god taking him over in a really brutal way and using him, by Hanan Masak, who is just way smarter than Rulad, because Rulad is probably not the smartest kid on the block there, but he's not dumb by any means. He's just not. He lacks wisdom and experience to understand the plays of people around him. He is naive, and you see those things slowly dying, and I think that's a big tragedy to look at how someone just steps into that and then just gets ground to pieces by the world. And that sucks. And I feel bad for him, but in that scene, you see how they basically lose control of that, and you see, we just hear mentioned that people are like Lethery prisoners are killed or raped in that tent, because with that kind of weird power vacuum almost in there comes, and that's like sour victory, which is obviously sour because, yes, we've seen that it comes at this really high price. There comes this loss of morals and morality, and those two are connected, right? It's like people are frustrated that their victory they cannot really enjoy their victory because they basically know that it was bought with with a way too high price, or one with the wrong tools in a way, and so they feel already bad and they take out their frustration, and that comes a general breakdown of order and so forth. I don't want to say order, but a breakdown of morals and generally society, and we see the beginnings of that here. And it's interesting to watch how Rulad is basically struggling to be a good emperor and do get things right, but he's just not up to it. And him being crushed basically by that, whole armor of gold is very much a metaphor that we will see unfold in the future, I suspect. Keep that in mind. Anyway, so yeah, we see that going on. We see at the same time there's an interesting situation there with Mayen that I wanted to talk about in a moment. It's I think we see Mayen beating Featherwitch and taking her frustration out on Featherwitch, and everyone noticing except Rulad, because Rulad is not very aware. We had that earlier talk. I think it's between Featherwitch and it is between Featherwitch and Udinas, where Udinas says when they're talking about that Mayen is being used and destroyed basically by Rulad in a way, right? And there Udinas says this incredibly terrible thing where it's no one cares about that. And I find this a very interesting point there, because it's we all know that this is going on. And that's once again the Stephen Erickson's brilliance with this here is we as readers know, and all the slaves know, and all the Tist Edur know. Everyone knows, and no one cares, because I don't know. I mean, this is not me doing a full on, like, I didn't do any research on this, but I believe Mayan is not on the top five list of of characters we really care a lot for as Malazan readers. I mean, there's probably some people out there who with whom Mayan and her storyline resonates, but I find it's something you have to force yourself to actually look at, to face it, and then care. And Urinas saying, putting it like in those blunt terms, like no one cares about her, just reinforces that thing. And that's once again one of those situations where you see how Erikson manages to show something in the book, and if you think about it, also like directly with you as the reader, because people in the book have the same reaction basically as we as readers most of the time there. Yes, the whole topic of being used and using people is obviously something that we need to talk about more. We've learned about Udina's child being with those Tilani mass in this bit of world that is part of the dragon's hold slash warren slash whatever. And that's obviously gonna be an interesting storyline. Remember that, like, Udinas is not a voluntary father there. He was raped by Menandor. And now you have on the other side, you have Mayan being apparently being pregnant by Rulad, which is also going to be is also going to be a child of rape. Basically, we see Featherwitch being raped, and we see obviously have, and we don't see her being raped, but we kind of get the point that it's happening. And what we see there, like especially with the Mayan Featherwitch situation, see how such things perpetuate. That's the insidious part about sexual violence, is that Mayan is a victim of sexual violence, and she then perpetuates that Featherwitch, and Featherwitch then is perpetuates that in a different way to Udinas when she's cruel to Udinas, right? And it's that all-encompassing circle of misery that I find so, like, it's, I don't know, it just hurts. And you're like, yeah, and you're sitting there from the outside like, yeah, why doesn't like any one of those people stop and try to be a nice person? And that's obviously way easier said than done, because once you're in that situation, you're suffering, you're broken, and you get broken again and again and again. You just want to lash out. That's that influence of the crippled god right there. Once again, the crippled god is sort of a metaphor for that. It's like he's being chained and broken again and again. Like he's been chained several times, and he just like perpetuates it and lashes out again and again. Yes. So the other thing there is the big thing we should probably talk about is the situation of that trip of Seren Pedex and the Crimson Guard people closer to Letheras. And we learn a bunch of interesting things there. One, we have a depiction of like deserters violence, which is something that you have in war a lot. It's like when it comes to war crimes on your own population, they're not like, committed exclusively by your attackers. No, there's also like deserters and so forth. And that's something that you find that has always happened. You find descriptions of that all the way back from, like, I don't know, you read your Peloponnesian War, you read novels or descriptions from like the 30 Years' War. If you're from Germany, go read The Adventures of Simplicissimus. That one has very casual descriptions of deserters or soldiers abusing, exploiting their own population. I mean, you should generally read it because it's a very interesting, good book, and sort of the German alternative to the picaresque novel in a way, and obviously a great document of the 30 Years' War times. And I'm pretty sure there's like English translations of that. Anyway, So yeah, we have that situation. The question is like, what happens? Why do deserters act that way? And I think it's once again one of these ideas that like once a support structure, a moral, I'm gonna call it moral, but it's obviously nothing to do with good and evil. But once your like moral support structure breaks away, crumbles, once those certainties that we all have in life about that how things work, once those are attacked and we break out of that, that takes so much support structure with it, so much damage. It's like you're a soldier in an army, you feel you're invincible because like for the last 500 years your country has always won every war. And then you're attacked and you lose that battle. And that takes away so much certainty. And that takes so much more than just your like, assuredness that you will win that specific battle. It's way more that gets taken away. And if that was sort of the thing that underpinned all of your personal morals in a way, if that thing is just washed away, then like everything goes, right? It's sort of that weird like Thomas Hobbes like war of everyone against everyone kind of thing in there. The homo homini lupus kind of situation going on there, and suddenly life is once again nasty, brutish, and short. Not only for gnomes, to paraphrase Terry Pratchett. Anyway, um, sorry, I didn't want to make a joke about these terrible things, but then Terry Pratchett creeps into my mind again and again. What we also get there is like this small detail about a blue rose being maybe more than just a duchy or a bunch of duchies that were conquered. Also, that great idea of the great concept that the whole Lethery cavalry just sucks because the Blue Rose people fucked them over and sold them wrong saddles with non working stirrups. Now, that obviously only worked because there's no, although, no, there's no stirrups in Toblach saddles either, but but yeah, riding professional cavalry without working stirrups is something that you just cannot do. Um, so that's just like a nice bit going on there. Oh yeah, that's like another big thing that we need to talk about at some point. The Azath and Death Hold, the Azath dying there in Letheras, and it's suddenly becoming more a hold or warren or whatever of death. And the fact that they didn't have a god of death within their set of tiles, that was just like really interesting to look at how, because that once again goes back to that question, who or what shapes what within that world. Is like how can that work? Why can't all like, so apparently Hood's realm doesn't extend to the entire world of Malice, of the like the entire planet. That is that possible? I have no idea. I need to think more on that. But to see that everything, like how important, a vitally important death is, and there's a lesson in there because when Cedar Guru Khan talks to Bryce Pettit about the fact that we're all that it's like this empty hole and we're not facing. That's something that is very very important for, like once again a parallel to our own world, our current times. And Letheras is very much something where we can take a lot of the negative aspects of our consumer capitalist society from, because we in modernity have banished death very far away. I know this sounds very much like a how to say very much like a platitude these days, but when you compare like your medieval or even Renaissance and Baroque memento mori style, the presence of death in a pre-enlightenment time was much closer within society, within the Western society. Obviously, with other like cultures, this is a different situation. But within the Western cultures, death was much more integrated into everyday life, and we have over time, with the progress of science and medicine, Death has been banished from that and from our everyday life. Yes, we do have like cemeteries, and we do still, but we push this further out and out and out and try to ignore it all the time. And that is obviously not always a useful thing and lead to all kinds of problems there, especially when it comes to dealing with the past. And apparently this, I mean, we'll look at how this like develops further during this story, but apparently it's changing now, and we'll see how the world will adapt to that. Um, well, also I feel I just love the fact with our good friend Bug, like, when he always like insists that he really doesn't want to be worshipped. That's just so good every time. I just really love that. You'll see why at some point. I mean, you're probably already suspecting, but I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, that's just so good. Um, all right, so I think that's enough for now. I'm going to go and carry some boxes and drink some beer and eat some raw meat because that's moving house in Germany, I suspect. All right, I'll talk to you tomorrow about more Midnight Tides. Until then, cheers.